All right. Well, welcome everybody. We're so excited to have you here with us. Unfortunately, this is our last Jewish poetry series of the season. This is our last one until next year. So that's a little disappointing, but luckily, Baruch and Phil worked so hard on this series. And we have three amazing poets today that I'm very excited to hear. So just a little bit of a reminder, try to keep yourselves muted just so we don't interrupt our poets as they are speaking. And as well, you're free to go into the chat, write things, please encourage our authors or make comments or things like that. That is totally welcome, but just keep yourselves muted. So without further ado, I will let Phil and Baruch take it away. Thank you guys so much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Erica. And Erica's just been such a wonderful coordinator over the years, and this is yet another year that she's really kept us in line. So thanks so much, Erica, who's our representative from the JCC Buffalo. Appreciate it. Yeah, we're so excited. I think we've had a wonderful series, Baruch. And this is kind of a nice send off. Sort of like a, final, I don't know, almost poetry.
A
Geez,
final firework of poetry lighting up the sky.
thank you. I needed you to say that. I was building you up for that.
Thank you. I needed you to build me up.
You do. And we all love Baruch's hat, so we're gonna appreciate that. So we have three wonderful poets. We're gonna, as we often do, sort of listen to them in alphabetical order, and I'm going to introduce the first one, who's Carlie Hoffman. Very honored to introduce her. She's the author of three collections of poetry. Her most recent that just came out, I think, like 2 months ago, something like that, in March, right? One More World Like This World from Four Way Books, and no longer forthcoming. It's already there. So, and I think the links for the poets' works are on the chat, I believe. I think Erica mentioned that. So if anybody wants to know more about them, or maybe take this reading into the future by purchasing their books, that would be great. Because in a normal bookstore, reading, in a bookstore or in a library or something, the books would be stacked right there, and they'd be we could admire them, and so I want to let you know that they're there. And the book that recently that came out before that won the National Jewish Book Award in 2023, When There Was Light. And her first book, also from Four Way Books, was This Alaska, winner of the Northern California Publishers and Authors Gold Award. Authors Gold Award, that sounds just so cool. In poetry, and a finalist for the Northern California Publishers for the Forward Indies Book of the Year Award, which is wonderful, wonderful distinction. She's also this is really cool, a translator from the German, and I may be mispronouncing this, even though I took German, so Selma Mirbaum Eisinger's Blutenlesse? Blutenlesse? Is that right? Kind of close, maybe. With World Poetry Books in 2026, and the monograph art book White Shadows and Alicia Hager and the Cameraless photograph, Atelier Editions, and in collaboration with Harvard's Bush Resinger Museum, and she's completing the translations of the essential poems of Rose Auslander, which is forthcoming. I think you can see some of her poems on those translations online on the Poetry Foundation website, and they're really powerful, I think. So I think that's great that with the translations are really wonderful. In Carlie's poems, I find much movement, trees moving away and toward each other, voices speaking of lives moving back into the past, a father driving, mumbling a Kabbalistic prayer, and there's something beneath these services, these verging sorrows. I also love Carlie's craft, the way she arranges language on the page, natural speech, the lines sometimes clipped, sometimes stuttered out, sometimes rushing off the tongue, reflecting a singular grammar, a powerfully unique voice, and not to mention the astonishment of her images, and metaphors that gives me an absolute surprise when I read them, like a baby placed in the frozen bird of her lap. Images like that are just wonderful. Or a river is a cantor singing, which I'm going to steal. Sorry, Carlie. Or an elephant rubbed sky, which was, wow, okay. In other words, her language is infused with loss and yearning, aware of the ghost past, yet deeply within the present, as she says in one poem, the smell of manure I have come to love. And since I live in the country around a lot of manure, I really got that line. Of her book, When There Was Light, Ellen Bass praises the themes that are universal of history, memory, identity, the struggle to understand our lives. And the incredible translator, Emil Alcalay, who just translated the book, the poems of Nasser Rabbah, which is fantastic. Of Carlie's new collection, One More World Like This One, um, uh, Alcalay says, there is a resilience and clarity in Hoffman's work that is all too rare and warrants our close attention. So let's give our close attention to Carlie Hoffman. I'm very honored to introduce her.
Hi. Thank you, Phil, for that really beautiful introduction. And Baruch and Erica, thank you. Thank you for having me. It's an honor to read with Yehoshua and Alicia. And I also love the Brothers November comedy act, which I got to experience before the Zoom started.
It's not over. It's not over.
So forget the poems, stay for the comedy act. I'll start by reading a few poems from my second book, When There Was Light. And what I'll say about that before I read the poems is that a lot of the book draws on documents and a newspaper article about part of my family's immigration story to the United States, to a farm on upstate New York, where they were refugees of the Holocaust, and they came from Wiesbaden, Germany. And my grandfather was a Holocaust survivor. So I'll read some poems from that book, and then I'll move into the most recent book. On a pre-war piano. From the future, I watch the lights flickering in the windows of a boat, shivering in the icy weather of another planet's sea. I wait silently for its docking. Soon, people with my bone structure step over the threshold where I can see their glowing ankles and briefcases filled with news of the world. The world has so many rooms, it's impossible to pinpoint where mine begins. During the war, my grandfather emerges from a ship and traces his new alphabet across the dirt. The ship's hull balloons into an elephant-rubbed sky. Soon the sky fills with people. My grandfather turns the dial of his American radio to the prayer of a wordless song. After the farm was sold to FedEx. My grandfather is still alive and living upstate, smoking on the porch with one leg up. He's watching a cloud of boys toss a baseball back and forth with such grace and economy, sneakers kicking dust into apricot mouths, sweating backs colorful and clawed. He is watching them move toward their most primitive selves, flaming horses in the old barbed wire farm. So much of what's been lost belongs to the ground. Newspaper headlines, the family name, all drunk and dreamed away. Soon, every voice around wills the present tense. Like their country's flag, all the mothers wave dish towels out the kitchen windows for their sons to come inside and wash their hands. Wait, he says, and the wind catches. The boys drop their mitts offhandedly on the grass. Give the lake a moment to speak about the horses. I have a heart. It is full of horses. My mother's heart, the horses. In the lake's center, rain breathes down. Someone lies bedridden. Someone's brother goes estranged. For years, hooves steep in mud, a mare's bent knee. Closure is the rain dripping over blood-lined leaves above our dream lake. No, the water was never blue. No, don't catch this heart. Sadness, too, it carries. Which horse do you carry? That's what you need to know. The last poem from this book I'll read is the last poem in the book. I think the query of this poem grew into or extends itself into the recent collection. I think that's how I write. I think. It's called Giving the Names of Things Their Solitude. I don't remember when I began hearing a tune in the rain and architecture. But nights are so tranquil now, like floating in seawater. The teal broth making room for me, a minor planet. I float through my weeks, listening to birds lifting from the sable lottery of city trash bags. Glad to be far away from your voice, undisturbed by speech. I have always cared too much for the idea that two animals who have minds, an aptitude for thought, are meant to understand and take care of each other. Even in failure, it's something I demanded. A virtuoso demanding eloquence from a smashed flute. Through the twilight, spring's pink blossoms give themselves away. I'm not sorry if we never speak again. The exaggerated squirrels, their kissing bones, and tearing through soil, the raw sounds of the new world. And so I think I've always been interested in the meaning of language or what language can do in the world. And that's part of why I started translating. There's other reasons for that, but so that obsession or that inquiry, it grew into these poems. And so I am devoted to the lyric in poetry. Sometimes I think it's helpful to explain things about a poem, but I think like lately with just everything is so much information or misinformation, it's just I'm just going to read the poems in honor of what language can do in poetry through the lyric. So I'll just read some poems and I'll let you know when I'm coming to the end of my reading, close to the last poem. And this first poem in my new book is, I'll just say that it's my version of a villanelle, and I consider it a prayer because the villanelle is an obsessive form. After translating the women of the 20th century, this winter I want a house where women glide from God's photographs, Their pre-war radios and eastern fields renounced of stars and the memory of cows. Their lockets filled with a history of grass. This winter I want a house, and in it the clock ticks near the window, sound leaking like bad oil, and watch how the curtain sops the smell of the past. This winter I want a house, with a garden and one rose like a lipsticked girl chewing a match. This winter I want a house. She brings in flowers waiting without rain, dazzling at the root in a bath, a metaphor of this winter house. A green stem behind her ear in the past, where the women glide from God's photographs. This winter I want a house. She is playing music when God is renounced. A condo for sale, overlooking the cemetery in Carlie, New Jersey. You must imagine Eurydice happy. That hell, too, is an industrious world. Round dining table alive with breadcrumbs. Rabbits handed off one morning on someone's front porch. An eastern sun bleeding down across blunted axe lines, blurred like letters on an optometrist's screen. You need to consider what she gave to herself. If you move through this world again, caught between the rainbowed bridge traffic of delivery trucks, staggered fish headed north for winter. Here you leave the dishes in the sink of an apartment where the rent's gone too high and still wanting to stay a while. You believe in this glimmer of land among the car repair shops, the sewage plant, overlooking the parking lot and graveyard's fertile grass. This is where, finally, so much life on your hands, you will sleep. Eurydice knew where she was going, her white gown blown downward, her music bleeding from the inside out. A blushed snow fox descending through the farm's technology. She didn't leave the light, but swallowed it, demanding a better song. Ode to the sudden forgetting of your grief. I arrive as night falls, as a goldfinch plummets to your feet like an old newspaper, like someone in a pool hall dropping the yellow ball, as heavy as carrying the pot of soup across a long hallway when it is dark and you are grateful for the moon whose face you recognize, even here, even now, as the cow lies frozen in the field, and the past swarms with its style and fire, the way people swarm when they are worried or afraid of what comes next, though it's only either flood or fire. The earth scorched in a rush as mothers in winter carry groceries to the car, the children witnessing so much work in an instant, they are almost invisible, almost the oxen lumbering down the hill in a violet stream, as in a song I knew, but have newly forgotten, as in my tongue weakens its knowing like a worn-out penny, as in lightning dims beautiful November, as in the squirrels fidget their sharp-muscled geometries, as I arrive in the falling forest, as I think to scavenge the dictionary for this word, but it is not language clearing the landscape of what I've known. The last two poems, they sort of bookend the first and the second sections. The book's in 3 sections, and they sort of mirror and distort each other. So I'll read these 2 poems of the same title. Author's myth. Despite loving the strawberries for how they are wildly beautiful, because one of all the animals in you holds her magnifying glass above the anthill, wielding the sun, because human authority is insufficient, despite how good it feels, looking fish-like at the walls of the synagogue, because instead of strawberries, the rabbi's ocean mouth, there is the God in you, peeling your shell like a toenail. There is the fish-hooked God in you, like a question mark. Because Moses knew the sea upon arrival, before Carmel and the suicides. The sand keeps you warm. After Moses the logger, knowing a way out of the nowhere of the valley, despite the mountain is nothing and the only way through. Not every animal can survive this, but there is a tree you cannot name. Its voice glows out of nature. You must attempt, because it can't be read, where an ocean begins at the beginning, and not every animal can. Author's myth. Not every animal can begin at the beginning, where an ocean can't be read. Out of nature, a voice glows like a tree survived out of all the unnamed animals. When Moses knew his way through the valley, the sand was warm. Before Carmel and the suicides, after the sea, God was a fisherman above the world. The rabbi opened his throat, and the ocean swelled. God gave you feet, and you emerged in the synagogue, despite comprehending the fish-like walls. You are sufficient in the Son's authority. Human of all the animals, the strawberries are beautifully wild, and you love. Thank you.
That was wonderful, Carlie. I think you said that language drew you into poetry, but I could see that imagery must have also been there too. And I guess sometimes it's hard to separate imagery from language too, in a way. So I think there's no question that you have both, and I really enjoyed your reading. On to the next poet.
Are you really the one that introduced me?
Yes.
I wouldn't touch that one.
Don't worry, I have it covered. The next poet had the honor of spending many years of his youth playing basketball with me in our backyard. He tended to call a foul on any time I would block his shot, and I blocked his shot often. What this has to do with Yehoshua November's poetry, I will leave to the literary theorists among us.
Somebody else.
However, I will say that Yeshua's poetry rises above other poetry because he manages to elevate routine events with the spiritual, highlighting the divine in the commonplace. In finding the godly on earth in such a way, he acts as a true chassid of the Lubavitcher Rebbe and those Rebbes who came before him of the same tradition. Yehoshua November has been a finalist for the Los Angeles Times Book Prize, the National Jewish Book Award, and the Patterson Poetry Prize, each of which he clearly deserved to win but was robbed of. Take it away, Yehoshua.
Thank you. I just want to say something about the basketball game.
No, there's nothing to say about that.
The interesting thing is you were actually a few years older than me and my friends, but we let you play with us.
Yeah, the same old story.
Anyways, the first poem I'll read is called Upstairs the Eulogy, Downstairs the Rummage Sale. It's from my first book called God's Optimism, and it's set in Binghamton. And there wasn't really that much going on in Binghamton. It's like a college town kind of. So there was a Yiddish professor passed away, and in Jewish tradition, you want to try to bury the individual as soon as possible. So the day of the burial ended up coinciding with this rummage sale that the synagogue had already been preparing for weeks. So they ended up having to have the two events in the same place at the same time. So it's called upstairs the eulogy, downstairs the rummage sale. The beloved Yiddish professor passed away on the same day as the synagogue's rummage sale. And because they could not bear the coffin up the many steps that led to the sanctuary, they left it in the hallway downstairs. And because I was not one of his students, and it didn't matter if I heard the eulogy, they told me to stay downstairs, to watch over the body and recite psalms. And I thought, this is how it is in the life and death of a righteous man. Upstairs in the sanctuary, they speak of you in glowing terms, while down below, your body rests beside old kitchen appliances. And I recited the Psalms as intently as I could over a man I had only met once. And because I knew where he was headed, and you and I were to wed in a few months, I asked that he bring with him a prayer for a good marriage. And this is how it is in the life and death of a righteous man. Strangers pray over the sum of your days, and strangers ask you to haul their heavy requests where you cannot even take your body. Next poem I'll read was from my second book, Two Worlds Exist, and it's the title poem, and it's in sections, 3 sections. Two worlds exist. 1. If I wear an ice suit, I can fly beneath the sunset and not burn, my son said from the back of the van as we drove over the bridge beneath the pink sky. And if I wear an ice suit, I thought, perhaps I will finish my days without roasting in the oven of what one human does to another, or the furnace of what God does to man. Once in shul, I sat across from a rabbi who spoke of his suffering. He said, I don't have feet to stand on to complain, but I remember standing in a room 30 years ago, the Rebbe raising his voice to call God to task. A week earlier at the ritual bath, the rabbi realized he had forgotten his white Sabbath shirt. In the sanctuary, I watched him stand up to pray the silent prayer in his undershirt and long black coat. What role do these moments of minor embarrassment play in a life of greater miseries? Could the rabbi concentrate on his prayers? And if so, what did he ask God for at that moment? 2. If I had worn a cage of ice around my heart, it would not have cracked as I stood in the Cheder narrow hallway and heard the principal's matter-of-fact voice say, concerning one of my children, we cannot help her. If I wear a band of silence around my head, I will hear nothing. What my youngest daughter hears. I would like to rise up and lodge a complaint before God, but each morning I wake late for prayers and rush to catch up with the other worshipers. Once my wife turned to me and asked, do you think this happened because God wanted to show us what innocence looks like? Isn't she happier than the others? Then she turned her face back to her closet and cried into her blouses. 3. Two worlds exist, the higher hidden one and our earthly realm. Everything that occurs in this life flows down from the hidden world. That which appears good descends through an infinite series of contractions until it fits within the finite vessels of this world. That which appears tragic slides down, unmitigated, from the hidden realm. A higher, unlimited good this world cannot hold. So the mystics explain suffering, if all comes from above, from where no evil descends. Is this something one tells another who is suffering? This is something one does not speak, but tries to believe when life no longer seems possible. When I was younger, I believed the mystical teachings could erase sorrow. The mystical teachings do not erase sorrow. They say, here is your life. What will you do with it? I'll go back to an earlier poem from my first book. This one is called How a Place Becomes Holy. Sometimes a man will start crying in the middle of the street without knowing why or for whom. It is as though someone else is standing there, holding his briefcase, wearing his coat. And from beneath the rust of years come to his tongue the words of his childhood. I'm sorry, and God, and do not be far from me. And just as suddenly the tears are gone, and the man walks back into his life, and the place where he cried becomes holy. Back to my second book. This poem is called One of the Few Jews. One of the few Jews. One of the few Jews on the R&B scene, he played keyboard for the Marcels of 1961 Blue Moon fame, until a voice called him back to the God of his forefathers in the middle of a nightclub solo. Drifting from job to job, he taught algebra in the Jewish day school, tapping his black loafers beneath the teacher's desk. And on the Sabbath, he sat in the front of the synagogue, praying the silent prayer longer than the other men, asking forgiveness for his former life on the road. And because he was a kind-hearted man who pitied the slower students, his voice would rise, obvious to whom? When the others complained he had reviewed the equation one too many times. And before holidays, when only a few students would attend, he'd pull out a red book he kept in his desk and read to us the story from the Talmud of the highway robber who transformed his life and married a great sage's sister. Once, as he turned his back to leave the school building and walk home, I slipped the peel of a banana he had just given me into the opening of his worn leather briefcase. And because I was in 10th grade and he was my teacher, the universe of the small rented attic, where he opened his bag to see how his kindness had been repaid, did not exist for me. Its absence reinforced the next day when he said nothing in class. After I graduated, I heard that he had married one of two blind twins from his hometown, who also played the piano. Then, suddenly, he disappeared without a word. No one in the community ever heard from him again. Oh, Mr. Males, can it be that a soul descends into a body, asked to fulfill a mission it cannot complete? This world is cruelest to the best people. Please come back, Mr. Males. Your wife is silently waiting before the piano in the foyer. Your seat is empty in the front of the shul, and you were the only one in the whole synagogue who knew how to pray. Okay, I'll just read two more from my newer book, which came out in September, but Phil said I need to have a new book already. So I'll read two poems. The first poem I'll read is called What About the Here and Now? And it's a poem in sections. It doesn't have numbers, so I'll just pause briefly between the sections. What about the here and now? When you die, you will meet God, reads the billboard, foregrounding the stretch of industrial factories off the state highway on my commute home each night. When I was 24, I felt a great weight lift as I walked past New Life dry cleaners, Squirrel Hill snowmelt underfoot, and first believed in the Baal Shem Tov's conception of divine providence. Each leaf's falling, each turn on the way down is prefigured in, at each moment governed by, the divine imagination. The next week, a faceless force pulled me out of my chair in the Star Poets course on Apollinaire and the French Surrealists and placed me in a New Jersey yeshiva. In the study hall, a rabbi, thin as a reed, translated a Hasidic discourse on the world's non-existence. Creation, relative to the Ein Sof, is like a sun ray inside the globe of the sun itself. Because everything transpires within the divine, nothing occurs that is not fated. I sat motionless in my seat for 13 months. Once, after the day's last prayers, I was summoned to the payphone in the rundown yeshiva coat closet, rabbinical students' dusty fedoras hanging on hooks, to hear my dark-haired wife whisper she was pregnant with our second child, our first son. A week before his birth, in need of employment, I crossed the bridge that led to Brooklyn, mythic city of my father's childhood, to discuss the metamorphosis with 20-year-old seminary students just returned from the Holy Land, who I suspected would take issue with their Czechoslovakian brothers' modernist conviction. A million random factors had come together just so to bury his life. Kafka passed away on the 1st of Sivan. That was actually yesterday. Anniversary of the Jewish nation's arrival at Mount Sinai. The day, the Midrash states, all theological debates were set aside, and 2 million Jews camped in the desert, like one man with one heart. The roles and faces here are unrehearsed, Zimborska wrote. Still, in my 19th year, I spotted my intended, carrying a tray of steaming green beans to the serving station on our first kosher kitchen shift at the upstate public university. Thin arched eyebrows, long dark hair, a space between her front teeth, eyes backlit by a calm radiance I could not name. Kafka's paternal grandfather, Yaakov, was a shochet, a ritual butcherer, one who must possess exemplary fear of heaven in the Czech village of Osik. He believed in divine providence, the force that stripped me from my table in the yeshiva study hall to explain to strangers of the opposite sex at the Jewish night college why an insect, once a man, might climb a wall and cling to a photograph of a woman in a fur coat cut from a glossy magazine. We walked down a lane between a corn feed factory and grassy field in Postville, Iowa. It is father-son weekend at yeshiva, my eldest son's third high school in 3 years. At this one, the rabbis tell me he is a good bacher, a serious student. When I share this with him, he looks down at the concrete path in disbelief. When he was a boy, I lost my temper whenever he stared off during morning prayers, pushing away a God I told him was close. Before he was revealed as the century's great mystic, founder of the Hasidic movement, the Baal Shem Tov, known for his infinite patience, served as a teacher's assistant in a Polish village, walking the youngest children to school and back. Once, when I sat beside him during evening prayers, my father, away most nights at the hospital, lovingly circled his thumb around the back of my neck. Kafka's mother gave birth to 6 children, Franz, the eldest, 2 brothers, George and Heinrich, died before he was 7. His 3 sisters, Gabrielle, Valerie, and Utla, were murdered in the Holocaust. Those who believe a divine force oversees every detail are asked to explain the world's sadness, but they can't. Okay, one more short poem. This one is called Exile for the Sake of Redemption. Exile for the sake of redemption. The way a teacher, standing at the blackboard, chalk in hand, suddenly withdraws into himself to follow the comet tail of a thought more profound than he has ever known. Then, after a long pause, opens his eyes and returns to his classroom to share his discovery with his students, is the way the mystics say God seemingly recedes back into himself until suddenly, after centuries, redemption comes, and a divine light more radiant than the world has ever known illuminates the universe that thought it had been forsaken. Thanks so much.
Great job, Yehoshua. Great job. This is wonderful. I never get tired of hearing your poetry. I get tired of you, but not your poetry. Well, I think I said too much already about that. Anyway, this next poet did not grow up playing basketball with me, or else she probably would have blocked a lot of my shots. However, the poet Roger Kamenetz once called Alicia Ostriker's poetry a prophet's quarrel with the divine presence. This is an insightful description of her work because it portrays the magnitude, authority, ambition, and depth of it. One critic said that her new book, The Holy and Broken Bliss, focuses on larger concerns beyond the self, to the interconnectedness of racial violence, global catastrophes, and politics. At the same time, the speaker draws comfort from the world as it is, in all its complexity, inviting the reader to do the same. To me, this praise further captures the great scope of Ostriker's work and sets her above those who are preoccupied with petty or narrow matters in their writing. Signifying their universal appeal, many of Ostriker's works have been translated into Italian, French, German, Spanish, Chinese, Japanese, Hebrew, and Arabic. On top of all this, she has received the Patterson Poetry Prize, the William Carlos Williams Award, the National Jewish Book Award, among many other honors. Let's welcome our next poet and her great words. Oh, you're muted. You're muted. There
Now
you go.
I'm muted? Okay. Hi, everybody. It is such a pleasure to be here. I'm so happy to be here along with Carlie and Yehoshua and all of you. Many friends here. I hope you're having a good time. I am. Two terrific readings. Thank you. I will just be reading from this most recent book. Here is what it looks like. With a painting on it. The Holy and Broken Bliss, and the subtitle is Poems, Poetry in Plague Time. And plague in this book, you come to understand, is both COVID, because it was written in the COVID years, and the illness of our society, the illness of the body politic, the sickness of the world around us. And threaded among these things is what's going on in my life and my husband's life, which is basically getting old and preparing for what happens after you get old. So I'll start with this is a kind of preface to the whole book with the title, These Be the Words, which is from Deuteronomy. The words of an old woman shuffling the cards of her own decline, the decline of her husband, the decline of her nation, her plague-smitten world. Virus that has slain its millions, rage and despair driving the body politic into violent writhings, knotted upheavings, drama I watch from the wings. Telling myself, these too are the wings of the Shekhinah beneath which I arise and shower, dress in the morning, undress at night, in my house of many doors, many windows, little sky, song reversed to clanging, alarm, alarm. Write if you can find words, I tell myself. Write what you are afraid to write. Lay down your cards. Step over the lintel through that door. Write or die. So part of the book has to do with desperation, and that last phrase, write or die, I lifted from the modernist poet H.D., who is a great hero of mine, and who, as an old woman in her last book, Hermetic Definition, used those words, write or die, and I offer them to you. Plague time ritual. We no longer leave the apartment. We cook or order in and eat amply together. I make a pleasing borscht, he a pleasing French onion soup. Together we dance the long married kitchen dance. He is slowly, steadily losing weight. He jokes that he will not die. He will grow smaller and smaller until I can carry him around in a teacup, exhibit him to my friends. This is an excerpt from a longer poem called Elul. And I'm reading only because it has the best joke in the whole book. But it's just an excerpt. I'm climbing a wet, slippery rock face. I have no gear, can't see to the top or the bottom. Looking around, I observe many other climbers clinging to the same wet rock. I greet the trees in the park. They return my greeting courteously. I say to my husband, I am convinced the trees are sentient beings. He replies, I bet they make the same mistake about you. So there's a little bit of domestic stuff, and then there's the world that we were all living through. Demonstration in plague time. They call their region the flyover states, states of trash, cockroaches, despisals. Today they are demonstrating against vaccination. It's all about anger, isn't it? Anger and hurt beneath it. The disrespect hurts like anything. Halo of piquant mosquitoes humming. They are dying of the rank disrespect. dying of disease, drink and drugs, suicide. If anyone has arms long enough to reach past the anger, to embrace the hurt, that alligator in your belly, that repetitive mockery, if the magic of love exists anywhere, let us imagine a superhero president pulling it out of his sleeve, a rainbow scarf, a mitten from the cedar chest of a painful childhood. They say that is what Jesus did, simply reached out to the hurt with arms like tree boughs, fingers like springtime petals. So that's a little piece of reality and then a little bit of fantasy about where healing could come from. And then this next poem is also from that period. All that year. All that year. We were body surfing a wave of public venom, attempting to swim. It was terrific, thrilling. Hate sprayed us on the left and on the right. We wondered, would it smash us into a reef? On screen, our swaggering leader, man we elected, loosed lies from his lips like eels. It was a good moment for cartoonists and journalists and billionaires and lovers of guns. A good moment for poets. Poets thrive on disaster, born as we are within the wound. And then this next poem, also from the same period, is just a transcription of a video that I happened to see during that period, and which some of you may have happened to see as well, or something like it. Nocturne. A man sleeps in his car in the fast food parking lot. A cop knocks on his window. The man is passive as a peony, gets out of the car, hands over his papers without complaint, does the breathalyzer quietly, then the cop leans over the man's ear, begins to arrest him. Parking lot lights cast a cindery gleam on the naked, speckled asphalt. The video camera stares. Suddenly, the man fights like a tiger, struggles free, runs, is shot, dies. We wonder, was it the handcuffs drove the man mad like that, or something else? Can we guess what word the cop whispered in that black man's ear that night? And then, of course, I have my troubles also, not just the world. This poem's called Tachycardia, and it's a not fatal but troublesome heart condition. Tachycardia all day yesterday, faint 8 a.m. By evening, a fast thud-thud, insistent, as if someone is trying to tell me something in a language I don't know, the sign language of an entity that expresses itself in rhythm and is becoming impatient with my ignorance. We used to understand each other perfectly, or so I thought. I thought we were like sisters. Now it seems for 80 years she has labored nonstop, thump, thump, 24/7 without complaint. I have been like some plantation mistress, believing in my own benevolence, believing I and my personal house slave understand each other. Now my heart is racing as if to get away through the underground to freedom. I have started to think that that trees are really my friends, or I'm their friend, or they're my guardians, or I'm their guardian, or something. Late winter in playtime. We permit ourselves a walk every day. We believe outdoors is safe. We remove our masks, and the trees in Riverside Park are so individual. The curved or abrupt swerves of their boughs appear to demonstrate free will in cahoots with biology. So then one day, crossing the street to the park, something in the air, not wind, not fragrance, brushes against my body, surges like breakers from the row of leafless sycamores. What can it be? It must be the sap rising. Yes, today must be the day the sap begins to rise, exciting the trees so that their bodies emit waves of a chemical science cannot yet name, which my own body can sense, even in the midst of winter, even in the midst of plague. One more little domestic poem. Helpmate. In my dream, when I murmur, I won't be able to live without you, he gallantly replies, yes, you will. In real life, he would say, he worries about me. Who will fix my computer when it goes on strike again and I panic? Who will do the complicated financial logistics? Who will stop me from carelessly setting the house on fire? Now I'll finish with a poems from the last book in which the spiritual quest that's the real driver all along comes out. Prayer to the Shekhinah. In my prayers night and day is the hope that you will visit me, which possibly you have been doing all the while inside my skin, producing hymnities of birth, of lamentation, lifted from every mass grave in the world, scratching me, pinching me from inside, calling me an idiot, since I do not know how to reach you by myself in the carapace of this body, struggling like the turtle to move as fast as I can and not get run over crossing the street. You at a distance, beloved, my mother, my daughter, you at a distance, my soul who remains at a distance. They say you will travel to meet me if I travel to meet you. Pity I am so slow, but am grateful for the handful of past moments you have spoken with me, the fool, who hoped to be counted among the poets weeping along the path to her own soul. Then her response. Speaking slowly, softly, she says, "Pay attention, my dear. Not long from now, not far from here, like many of your elderly friends, aching with their struggles, you will embark on the medical mystery tour through a peninsula of loss. When you enter at length the cave of quiet time among the rocks, the mossy walls, the families of bats, so much depends upon chance in the form of the nurse currently on call. Hopefully one of my granddaughters who will take your trembling hand and lead you through its polished marble labyrinth by the rhythms of your body's decline, the drum taps pacing the flute down to the river that flows through blackness. Bangles agleam on her wrist. Get in the boat, she will say, reaching out her hand to help. Confession. When I chose him, he was the one, the quintessence of energy and wit. Sweetie, I say, stop making me laugh. When I laugh at my age, I have to pee. And you know my bladder is like a talkative old person. When they pause, you may think they are done, but not at all. And there was always the river rushing through blackness inside him. Two more poems. The force that sends light. May it find me. May it find my eyes, illuminate my mind, gladden my waning days. May the one who writes in the book of life inscribe my name among the poets. May I learn to read it. May my humble request for more light, more time be honored. Coda. Let my poems be shards of the holy and broken bliss that circles and shackles the earth. Thank you.
So wonderful.
Wow.
Magnificent.
So moved. And moving.
Great way to end.
Wow. Thank you, all of you.
Thank you all for being here.
Thank you for coming.
I think we've heard some poetry tonight.
Would anyone like to say anything? Any comments, questions for our poets? This is your open mic, you might say, your chance to speak up. So feel free to dive in.
Unmute yourselves. Unmute thyselves.
I just think this was an absolutely incredible evening. I thank all three poets, and I thank you, Baruch and Phil. This is a wonderful series, and I hope it continues on next year. But it was great. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard.
Thanks.
Richard.
That was wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you.
What do you think, Baruch? Should we do another year?
I think we have to.
Erica?
We owe it to the world of poetry.
I think that poem Coda could end every poetry reading ever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like did 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
Could Alicia say it again, the coda?
Sure.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here, Alicia. And there's at least 7 of my group here, and they've been
Hi.
behaving all the way through the reading. That's Elizabeth Lord Rollins there.
Hi. I went to
Thanks
school
for
with your daughter, Rebecca.
that.
And I just want to say I love your new work. I'm so blown away. I'm so grateful to the organizers for this evening. It has been truly a transcendent evening of poetry. And I especially want to thank the organizers because I was aware of Alicia Ostriker's work, and I've been a fan of yours for a long time, since like 1981. But I had never heard Carlie Hoffman or the other reader, and I so enjoyed both of you as well. I'm just blown away by this poetry, so I want to thank everybody.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
All right,
got a
Alicia, you
request.
want to read code? I think there's
Dakota, 2 lines. 2 lines. Let my poems be shards of the holy and broken bliss that circles and shackles the earth.
Ah,
And her book is available.
Marvelous.
Put it
Thank
in the
you,
chat.
Priscilla. That was wonderful.
Thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Erica, for your support. Thank you to the JCC of Buffalo. Thank you, Phil.
Thank you,
Thank
Barbara.
you to all the readers. Thank you, everyone in the audience who came. It's wonderful to see such a variety of faces. And it really is a good statement for the world of Jewish poetry that all of you are here.
Absolutely, and we can't wait till next year. Really,
Yep.
we really enjoy. We're the lucky ones.
Although I don't know how we'll get my brother on because I want another chance to make fun of him. So how are we going to arrange that for next year?
Well, maybe we could just do it at Thanksgiving.
That's too easy. And the audience isn't as big.
I think you should live broadcast your Thanksgiving. We'll do-
Yeah,
we could do that.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Sponsored by the JCC. That's too funny. All right. Yes. Thank you. Thank you all so much. Thank you so much, Phil and Baruch, for putting this series together. They did all the work. I just gave them good dates, basically. They really did all
You're
the
nowhere
legwork.
without the JCC Buffalo, Erica.
Thank
Yep.
you. And have a relaxing summer, Erica.
I know. I'm
Definitely.
almost there. I'm almost there. So only got about 1 more week of pure chaos, and then we get to wrap it up. But I will be sending out an email with all of our poets' links to their books. We also are recording this, so it will be on our JCC Buffalo YouTube. So in case you missed anything or you came on late, you can definitely have like a recap, and don't be afraid to share that link as well. You can expect the email probably tomorrow. I got to check with my tech guy and make sure he's in. If not, you'll probably see it like Tuesday, Wednesday, because we are closed on Monday for Shavuot. But thank you guys so much, and keep a lookout for that.
Thank you.
everyone.
Thanks,
Love
everyone.
you, Alicia.
Thank you so
Thank you
much.
all.
Thank
Poet.
Wonderful evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you.
Have a growing in Eden.
Have a good night.
Good night.